Hey, welcome to the CEO Photog Club. I'm your host, Kylie, and this is where photographers come for more. More income, more systems, more freedom, and without burning out. You're in the right room, so let's talk some business. First of all, I am so stoked to be back on the podcast. It has been about 18 months since the last episode, and today I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to tell you who this podcast is for. I'm going to be honest about why I rebranded it and share a little bit of my story. So back in 2011, when I picked up my first DSLR camera, my goal was to document life. I wanted to document those big milestone moments, the senior pictures, the graduations, the family pictures, the new babies, all this kind of stuff. And then eventually that turned into weddings and all the things. But along the way, I realized that I couldn't just do this based off my love of photography. And I'm sure you feel the same way. You picked up your camera because you loved it. You loved taking pictures of people. You loved, the posing and editing, all these different things, right? But somewhere along the way, you realized that you had to actually make money. Photography is very expensive. It costs a lot of money to buy the equipment, now buy the SD cards, to have the website, to have the galleries, to have the CRMs, all that stuff. And so maybe you're booking the sessions, but you're feeling like you're on a hamster wheel all the time. Or you've Googled how to grow your business at 11 p.m. while you're exporting your galleries. Or maybe you're already doing well, but you want to go to the next level and you want to start thinking like a CEO and not just a photographer. This podcast is for photographers who are done playing small. You're ready to run that real business, to make real money, to actually turn that passion for what you do into a successful career. And I'm going to show you each week exactly how to do that and exactly what that looks like. So this is the CEO Photog Club, formerly known as Kylie Mentors Moms. I'm now on YouTube for the first time, so you can see my video if you prefer to watch my face. It's a little intimidating. I did buy a hat, so I don't have to do my hair every time I do this, and it's going to be adorable with the logo on it. I am on Spotify and Apple, as always, and you can also listen just on my website on the podcast page. You can get on our email list to get a cute little email in your inbox each week with the show notes, or you can find a little version of the show notes on our blog. And if you want to learn about any of the topics that you hear on here in more depth, I probably have a course for it. So you can go to the education page. So let's continue to talk about the rebrand. Some of you have been here since the very beginning. Kylie Mentors Moms launched in 2020 in the middle of the pandemic when I realized, okay, I am a leader in this industry. How are we going to get out of this? What do people need? And it has just grown and grown since then. And I loved that season. I actually went back through all the episodes as I've been preparing for this relaunch, and I listened to some of them, and I took some off and I updated some, and it all just started from sharing real conversations about what it's like to build a business and be a mom. It's never been a highlight reel. It's kind of like what it actually takes. These are mindset things, systems, marketing, kind of behind the scenes of what my business has looked like over the last 15 years. But over time, I feel like I've gotten more clear on who it is that I serve and what I believe about this industry, this photography industry, and for creatives and all that kind of stuff. And I realized that I'm not just talking to moms, first of all. I am talking specifically to photographers who want to build real businesses. So I rebranded, I recorded episodes. I had like 3 months outlined of all the things that I wanted to talk about on this show. And I was ready to launch. And then 2 weeks after, as I was, outlining everything, recording everything, my dad was killed. My dad was killed by a drunk driver on November 2nd, 2024. And I had just come home from a retreat in October, the middle of October, just a couple weeks before that, just ready to relaunch and dive in and do all this amazing things. But life just completely stopped for me. My dad was the best dad in the world. He always was. My whole life, I only can count on a handful of times on one hand where he ever really got mad or we got mad at him, kind of a thing. And we would tease him or never let him forget those things because they were kind of a big deal because he was just such a gentle, loving, fun dad. And he was kind of the reason I'm here. He is an entrepreneur, always has been. He always worked from home. He started several businesses. He wrote books. And he also just had a ton of awesome hobbies. So my connection with my dad really was centered around business and photography. And for my hero and this person that has been part of this whole world, to have him just, I wasn't going to cry, to have him just be gone off the earth, it was really hard. It was hard to climb back and to find my purpose again and to realize like what I needed to do and what he'd want me to do and all that. So it's taken me a long time to come back and to want to do this and to want to record this first episode. Like every time I was like, okay, it's been 3 months. It's time to pull the podcast back. It's been 6 months. It's been a year. Let's do this. I couldn't do it. I couldn't. But for some reason, in the month of April 2026, I just felt like it was time. And so I'm going for it again. I'm so excited. I have all the notes that I took in that October. Some we're still working on, and some things have just totally changed since then. Like we're going to be talking about AI and all these things that weren't really a big deal 18 months ago. So I'm excited. And I want to tell you actually a little story about my dad and photography. So my dad, he grew up always documenting our lives. He did film photography kind of in high school a little bit, and he always had a camera. He always had a camcorder. We have so many home videos. We have so many pictures from my childhood. He was constantly documenting life. He wasn't a professional photographer. He didn't really know manual settings, that kind of stuff, but he loved it. So in high school, he bought a DSLR when they were like the new thing, these cute little DSLRs. And I took it with me everywhere. So between my dad and me, we were always taking pictures. And then when I came to college and started dating my husband, I told my husband, like, one day I would love to do photography as a career. Like, I don't have enough money to buy my first camera, but like, it'd be so cool. I was like a broke college kid. We were getting married, all this stuff. So that Valentine's Day, he sold his Xbox and bought me my first DSLR camera. And then I married him a month later, and then I shot my first wedding that summer for $200 and bought back his Xbox. It was, our little love story. I've talked about it on the podcast before. But when I started that photography business, my dad kind of latched on, and he was like, wait, this is so cool. And so when I would learn something, I would share it with him. And so it was kind of our thing that we shared, but also business was too. He was the person I'd call, okay, Dad, like, I need to start a website. Where should I start a website? And he's like, have you heard of SEO? And he's like, you need to do SEO. So you need to do WordPress and you need to do this. And that's literally like how I was able to kind of jumpstart my business. And a lot of people know how much passionate I am about SEO and marketing, all this stuff that all stemmed from him. So anyways, that's the backstory about my dad. But let me tell you, fast forward to the accident. So he was killed in West Virginia. He was out there visiting his step grandkids. And on that last night he was there, they were supposed to come home the next day. They were watching the grandkids while my stepbrother, so many, words, my stepbrother and his wife were celebrating their anniversary. So they had a hotel this whole week that they were staying at, but that night they were staying at the house. So my dad had Parkinson's disease. I don't know if you guys knew that. He was diagnosed at 47. He died at 56. So he was about 10 years into Parkinson's. And one of the side effects of Parkinson's disease was that he couldn't sleep very well. So he would go to bed, and then he would usually wake up for a couple hours in the night, and then, he'd go back to bed, whatever. So he got pretty good at like just sleeping in chunks. And one of the things he started doing in the middle of the night when he couldn't sleep, which is really a good example to me of just making, lemonade out of lemons, is he would start doing time-lapse photography in the middle of the night. So he would set up his camera, and he would find cool spots, and sometimes he'd bike to them, and sometimes he'd hike to them, and sometimes he'd drive to them, and he'd set up his camera in the middle of the night to capture like starscapes and stuff. And he'd set it on a time-lapse, and then he'd come back and get it when he woke up in the early hours of the morning. So the night of his accident, I had texted him around 8:00, and his wife told me, oh, he's already in bed. He's so tired, whatever. And then at 4:00 in the morning, I was woken up to the phone call that he was killed. And I was so confused because I was like, wasn't he in bed? All these things. And so when she got home and we were trying to, hear what was going on, she was like, yeah, he couldn't sleep. He got up and, and all these things. And so he was going to head back to the hotel and da, da, da. And so in my head, she had his 70-200, but there was no camera. There was no his other lens. There was nothing, like his tripod wasn't there. These things that he always had. And so in my head, as she was telling the story, I was like, I bet he was going to set up a time lapse. And I just kept asking, do you know where the camera is? Whatever. And she's like, no, it wasn't in any of his stuff. I have all of his stuff. They gave me the backpack from the accident. The camera's not there. So I took matters into my own hands. First, I texted my stepbrother and was like, hey, can you look around the house? Can you look in the car? Can you look, everywhere? And he even went to the wreckage and looked in the wreckage, and there was not even a piece of it. And that's when I knew that his camera was probably set up somewhere in this town in West Virginia. And so I told him, I was like, can you go look in your trees? Can you look in your backyard? Can you see if it's set up anywhere? I don't even know if he had a tripod. So I'm like, he could have stuck it in a freaking tree. My dad is crazy. And so he didn't, he couldn't find it, whatever. A couple days went off. He called the police station. They didn't have it. They called hospital. Like, nobody had the camera. Sorry, I wasn't going to cry. I've told this story so many times at this point, but got to get a paper to fan my eyes. Whew. So I was up in the middle of the night one night and I was just like, I'm going to join this random Buckhannon, I don't even know if you say that right, West Virginia group. And I'm going to post in it and just see. And I posted a post that was like, my dad was killed in this accident in this area. He'd like to set up time lapses. I don't know where it is. It could be anywhere in this town. So I said, so if you see this camera anywhere, will you please let me know? It's a Sony. It's probably this lens. It's on whatever. And I went to bed and I woke up and had over 100 shares on it, all these comments. And I had like 3 message requests. The first one was like, I was with your dad on the scene of the crime and I held his hand till his last breath, which is a lie because he died on scene. So he was just trying to get probably my money, or I don't know. The second one was definitely this homeless guy that was like, I think I have it. If you I live on this street and if you pay me this, I'll send it to you. And then the third one was this lady from a church, this beautiful church that was behind my stepbrother's house. And she said, we actually found on Sunday morning, we found a camera on a tripod overlooking the cemetery. And we think it's your dad's. My gosh, I'm fanning myself with my Jesus picture. For those of you who don't get to watch this on YouTube, you're missing out. It was the only thing I could find. And they found my dad's camera. They mailed it to me with the tripod, all the things. They didn't charge me, which was so sweet. And it came 2 days later, and I put that memory card into my camera. I had a time lapse that started about, I don't know the details anymore, probably 20 minutes before he passed, 10 minutes. I can't remember. I wrote it down all the way through until I found out the news. It was about a 4-hour time lapse until his camera died. And you could see the stars as, he was making his ascent and we were waking up and we were finding out the news. And I put it together for our family and it's one of the treasures of my life. But what I love about this story is, first of all, who freaking photographs their own ascent to heaven? That's pretty crazy. But the thing that I love is that the last thing he did was photography. The last thing he did on this earth before he drove to the hotel was take a picture for our family. So the podcast has sat unfinished for a long time, but that didn't matter at the time because I was in that season and I couldn't come back. But I know photography mattered to my dad. I know business mattered to my dad, and I know I mattered to my dad, and I know he would want me to bring this back. And I know it's taken a long time. And so now coming back to it, I actually think it matters more to me than ever to bring this podcast back and to help you build a business that's separate from your life. A business that works when life happens, a business that can continue to grow. Life is lifing. I know I'm not the only one that's been through it these last 6 years. And what's been great is that I've been able to build a business that's been sustainable through the lifing. I have 2 versions of me and I'm trying to merge them together. There's the Kylie before my dad died and the Kylie after my dad died. And I'm trying to bring back those elements that I loved from before into the version of me now. This is a new and improved relaunch. This is a new and improved podcast, and this is the CEO Photog Club. So I already shared a little bit earlier about how I started my business with a starter DSLR camera that my husband bought me on Valentine's Day. And I just want to go back to those days. When I started, I had no connections. I was new in town. I had just moved to Cache Valley. I did not have any family connections, friend connections, anything like that when I started my business. I didn't have a studio. All I had was Google and the classifieds. We didn't even have Marketplace. We didn't even have Instagram. It was just a lot of figuring things out. And for a while, it was just me. I was the only one shooting, editing, emailing, building the website, all of that, until I hit the point where I couldn't take on anymore. But I also couldn't grow the way I wanted. And that's when everything changed. I brought on my first associate in 2015. So would that be about 5 years after I started my business? And not because I had it all figured out at this point. I just had to continue to grow because my business had grown beyond myself. And I realized in that point that this business could be bigger than me. I think a lot of us start photography. We're solopreneurs. It's just us. It's our name. And we think that we are the business. But what's amazing is that I've been able to build my business into a brand that isn't me. And it's not this can function if I go offline, off the grid for a month and my team can handle all the clients and all the different systems. Fast forward to now, we're shooting 650 projects a year. I have a team across 3 different states, and I've built a business that does not rely on just me because I want to be a mom. I want to be present. I want to show up when life is lifing. And this has just shaped everything about how I've run my business. I did not build this business to be impressive. I built it so I can be present with my family, with my kids, with my life. And now I coach photographers, helping them do the same. And that's the next chapter for me. And that's what this podcast is all going to be about. I'm going to kind of give you an overview of some things that we have coming. You can expect to hear a lot about systems and CRMs, SEO and blogging, long-term marketing, short-term marketing, social media marketing, the CEO mindset shifts that you need to get to the next level, real conversations about motherhood, ambition, behind the scenes, building a business. And every episode is going to come with club notes. So that's going to be takeaways. It's going to be your next steps and things you can actually implement, because information without action is just entertainment. And on the CEO Photog Club, we are action takers. We are people that move forward, even if it's just a baby step at a time. I wasn't expecting to get so emotional this first episode back, but I'm excited to be back. I named this the CEO Photog Club because I don't think we're meant to figure this out alone. This is your official invitation. You're in the room now. Pull up your chairs, guys. This meeting is just getting started. Also, make sure that you're on our roster. You see all these cute little club names I'm using? Make sure you're on my email list, because the club notes are going to be sent straight to your inbox each week, and they're going to have those action steps that we just talked about. And surprise, I just launched the second episode today, so you can go listen to number 2 right away.